can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. F***ing thing sucks.
All right. Well, welcome to the Buildology podcast here, guys. So it's been a couple of weeks since we got together and have been able to do it in various reasons for members here. So Mac and I holding down the ship today.
You got it. And hopefully everybody out there is safe and well, and got a Labor Day weekend coming up on us here in a bit. So hopefully we got some good plans.
Got some good plans. So I think maybe just kind of doing an update of state of the market and what's going on in the world of construction, investing, and might be in order because this thing that we're going through right now, day to day is interesting enough. Week to week, super interesting, and you let a month go by.
It's sheer madness out there.
Crazy. So why don't we start off? Why don't you tell me kind of what you're seeing out in the last month? What's some trends and things that you've been seeing going on in the market?
Yeah, I think really the main thing, Justin, is seeing this new normal that is approaching right now that we're starting to see in the marketplace, with lumber pricing. And, of course, that's the big topic. That's the one that's been in the news, been in the papers. And
that's one gets all the press is the lumber pricing.
Right.
And I think, if you looked at the cost of the house, that, it is a huge portion. Doesn't matter what you're doing as far as an investment property or a fix and flip, new construction, whatever it is. Lumber is a big factor in it. But I think you'd probably share the sentiment that makes the news because it was such a sharp incline. What doesn't make the news is the rest of it that's going on.
Yeah, and we've never seen lumber go up so much so fast, and that's what's really throwing everybody for a loop. But again, we've got that entire perfect storm. It's kind of a perfectly ugly storm.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's for sure. Of all the factors that have never been in play at the same time. A lot of these factors have been in play at different times in the last 40 years, but I can't recall ever seeing anything all at the same time. We have, of course, we all know what happened in 2020. We can't talk about, but that's been a big factor. It's what I still call a hangover from that. We don't have production back to where it really needs to be in all sectors of the industry. We've got demand that is up 500% to 600%.
Yeah.
In certain areas, at least in our area, that's the way it's going.
Yeah, I hear a little bit of news of like the market cooling off, and I'm a little hesitant to say that because I think, as crazy as the market is, I think people are just sitting on the sidelines and not wanting to participate in craziness.
That's exactly what's happening, Justin. I mean, I am seeing people sit on the sidelines right now, but my phone has never rung as much as it's been ringing since the last podcast.
God forbid if someone said, hey, there's a discount on something, forget about sitting on the sidelines. You draw everyone in the world out.
Well, and
you'd create a frenzy.
what I predict, and I got a really strong feeling about this, but what I predict with all the people I'm talking to that are sitting on that fence right now is they're waiting to see what's going to happen one more time, maybe two more times. I think people are realistic. They know this is not going to ever go back to where it was a year ago.
Yeah, I think it's starting to sink in, right? That we're at the new normal now, and
we're pretty close to it.
We're pretty close to it, right? Like these big price increases, they're not going to be giant price decreases coming around. This is basically what everyone is going to have to adjust that the price is going up from here. And I think, we just took a big inflation hit, and it was all at one time. It wasn't all spread over, multiple years. I think it just all happened at one time. When you look at the curve, it's just going to be straight up and then kind of a plateau. It's going to look like a, set of stairs that we made this big jump, plateaued off, and everyone's going to have to adjust. And how that translates through the economy, we're going to be dealing with the next couple of years because, right behind that is, does pay keep up with it? Who knows at this point, right? I mean,
and there's still such a labor shortage out there right now. That's another big part of the problem. That's one of the factors I just talked about. So,
yes, like you said, people sitting on the market. I've told a number of people, that are making that decision. I've heard it that they would, well, I'm going to sit on the side. Well, just be prepared. You're not prepared to pay this price now. I get it, but prepare yourself to pay more than that in the future. And that's a hard pill to swallow because they're just deciding not to be in the market right now.
Right.
Right.
And lumber's been the big ticket. That's been the hot item that's been in the media, but it's like the wiring, it's copper that and all the other things, even parts of the lumber.
And what it is like, so we have another business that does cabinets and just the flat panel products that go into making cabinets. What doesn't make the news, so lumber going up, historical 500-600%, makes the news. Everything else in the house just doubling doesn't make the news, right? And so when the prices comes crashing down, in lumber, people are like, oh, well, maybe there's some relief in sight. No, not when everything else doubles. And it's not just that the price has doubled, it's getting it. And so
good point.
I was talking to my rep today and saying, okay, well, if I had, a 300 unit apartment complex that I needed to do or something like that, there's no way to even bid on that project because you can't physically get the material. Forget about what the price is. Yeah, you could price it all day long if you could get it, but you could never even do it because that material is so hard to get. So we're taking, the price of what used to be a cabinet and basically you're doubling it. So that doesn't make the news when those 200%, 100%, no one is running a news article on that because it's very, very difficult because these people have this type of cabinet, these people have this type of cabinet. It's very, lumber is just this one thing on the commodity market that some reporter that can look at a graph and go, wow, that's really steep, right? And commodities are easy to see that when those commodities get changed and they turn into a product, that's very, very hard for any news article to say, okay, well, this is going up, And like adhesives, like it's gluing the stuff together is very, very difficult. Trying to get beams or OSB or, there's a lot of things that you're trying to glue together, and just the glue that holds all that together, you just can't get it.
And again, it goes back to a production issue. A lot of the plants that manufacture the chemicals, the glues and things like that, not back up to full capacity yet.
Right. And just there's going to be a big hangover in the market from all that stuff. So anyone thinking that pricing is going to come crashing down, that's not a realistic thing, because if it did, you would drag out all these buyers out of the market that are just sitting on there, and then you would be in the same situation. You couldn't get the product to handle another spike in demand.
Right.
You can't deal with the demand right now.
Well, and I think too, when you talk about delivery times and shortages and things like that, the actual production time has probably increased by, I'd say, 30 to 40%. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. And then if you factor the cost of that, increased amount of time, right? So anytime you add an increase to there's a cost of money increase.
Of course there is.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that goes up. And so it translates into higher prices across the board. Everyone's cost, if you can't deliver as much and you have that overhead and you can't split it over as many units, right? Your cost goes up, and that translates out into the public in every business, not just, home building, but French fries, and if there's a potato shortage,
everything,
right? And everything, right?
Yeah.
So that labor shortage, I mean, if you're sitting there paying bonuses for just to get people to show up to work, and you do that over a long period of time, that is going to affect the ultimate price of the good going out there, right? And so enough of that inflation going on. The question is, does wages follow that trend at some point, and we get into these periods of higher inflation that we're not used to seeing, right? So we got really, really comfortable at 2% inflation
Right.
a year.
Right.
You know,
Those days are gone.
those days are gone. Are we at a point where we're dealing with several years of 5% inflation? I
It's a
don't
wild
know.
card.
It's
Don't
a
know.
wild card, right?
Yeah.
And you take 5% inflation, and then you look at that across the board and what that is in automotive and cars and and houses, things, big ticket items.
Right.
That we've seen it in the past. I mean, if you look in the 70s and 80s and look at, inflation charts, we've been through it as a country before, so it's not uncharted territory.
Right.
So who's to say that's not something that we're staring at? We're staring at it for 1 year for right now.
Right.
But are we staring at it for 4 or 5 years?
Right.
And if you're sitting on the sidelines, the easiest way, people don't understand this, if they're buying a home, because when you buy a house, that's such a personal decision. You don't buy it from the investment side of it, right? But the best thing that you could do from the investment side of that personal decision is buy right now.
Absolutely.
Right? Because inflation is the counter to that is debt.
Right. Right.
Right.
And the folks I'm working with right now, many of them are just now, they've been sitting on the sidelines for the last maybe 6 to 8 months, kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. We reached our peak pretty much in June, I think, with lumber prices. And a lot of these folks now are pulling the trigger. I'm starting to see this trickle in of people saying, hey, I think the waiting's over. We know it's going to take 10 to 12 months to actually build this home. So we know that not all of our pricing is protected.
Right.
So, we've got people that are pulling the trigger right now, not knowing what the future holds, but pretty much knowing that we're getting very close to a new normal.
Yeah, I think
in
that's
the pricing world.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is just
don't wait.
Adjusting to a new normal. Like there is no sign that I can see that that is going to lower the price at this point, because there is no magic wand, because there's so much demand. These places are so behind. They can't keep up with demand that's out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
So any pulling anyone off the sideline is just increasing that. So there's no signs of that house crater coming up. The new normal is, I think, what everyone's got to adjust to. What you would be looking at is in the future, is it 5-6% a typical inflation market right now?
Right.
And if you did that, the best thing I'd say is you buy right now. And as painful as that is, right, when inflation starts happening year after year, you're locked in. That mortgage is locked in. That interest rate is locked in, right? And you're paying that down, because holding cash in your hand right now is the worst thing that you could do, right? And so, doesn't matter if you're investing or buying your personal house. If you're dealing anything with real estate, buying now is the answer. Can't go back in time. It would have been great, right? We all would have loved to have done that decision a year ago, 2 years ago.
Nobody
right?
saw this coming.
No one saw this coming, right? And so, understanding that it's not getting better, it's going to be more of the same of where we're at right now.
Right.
And that's what I think what we're dealing with now.
And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people that are saying, hey, now's the time to cut our losses and just move forward as if this is the new normal. But I think we're just about there.
I think we are. I think we are. And then, it's just going to be those incremental, like we're not going to see, we're seeing some stability enter in, but it's stability at that new price point. Right.
And it's interesting too, Justin, that, if you listen to the news, to the radio, to the television, the reporters talk about the housing boom is now over. It's an official announcement. The housing boom is over.
Right.
And I'm not seeing that at all.
No, I that's what I mean when I think they say the cooling of it is like this industry is such a big, slow moving thing.
Yeah.
Like the news article is easy to write, but they could easily write it just in the neighborhood that they're in. Right.
Yeah.
Reporting on all of the United States doing something in real estate is next
It's
to
futile.
impossible.
It's actually
It
it's
doesn't
futile,
matter.
and
Because you can find an instance where that isn't the case, or it is the case to support your argument, but to say the whole thing is doing this, that's a pretty big statement on the course of what we just went over
and
right
and,
now.
and you know, it's so market specific too
Right.
that you cannot put a label on it.
Right, you can't. You would have to, even within a city, like there's pieces of a city that you could break that down to, and you could find a case for it and a case against it
Right.
when you make a general statement like that. But what we can say is that the prices, going up, that's across the board. Now, the demand of them taking them off the market,
Yeah.
that's easy to measure and say, okay, solds, closing, stuff like that. But you can't measure who's sitting on the couch.
And,
Right.
and again, just to kind of recap about the great news that's out there right now is the fact that interest rates are at historical lows. They're
Right.
still staying there, so take advantage
That's
of
the
them.
sign that I look at, Mac, and I said, listen, why would the price crater when it's historically low interest rates?
Right.
There's no, now if they came out and they said, oh man, we're going to jump interest rates by 2%, they would have a panic, and then
Right.
so much demand would come out it would just make it worse.
You have that giant spike.
And
when
so
that
that's what they're
occurs.
worried about. They've been talking about moving interest rates up, but they're hesitant. They've been talking about moving interest rates up for a year,
Right. Right.
but they haven't done it,
Yeah.
right? Because they're scared if they do it. Oh my gosh, they know. And if you don't know out there, you need to know that the minute they
need to
do
know.
it, there's a panic that happens. And there's so much more demand once they announce it's really going to happen and we're going to have to move interest rates 1%. You're going to get so many more people rush into the market and create another demand problem. Right?
It's just like when you know that there is going to be a price increase coming in. When you
Yeah.
announce it,
Yeah.
a whole bunch of people get off that fence.
Right.
They make that leap of faith,
Right.
and then it slows down for a little bit.
Right.
And then, the demand builds back up again. But
Yeah.
in this case, there is I really believe there's a tremendous amount of people that are sitting on the sidelines that are about ready to step back into the market again.
I believe so.
agree?
And I agree. So we have this cyclical thing that happens every year about this time of year. Here we are in August, right? Schools in the month of August, people are figuring, let's get the kids back in school and,
Right.
all that. So August is a tricky month, but then a little bit of demand comes out, but then the holidays kick in, right? No one, across the country is focused on, moving at the same rate that they are in the springtime.
And that's typically, that's historically the time that the big box builders, the national
Yeah.
companies, start adjusting inventory. And if you're,
Right.
if you're patient, you're able to get a good deal.
Right.
That's the time when they're likely to discount. But there is no inventory right
There's
now.
no inventory, right? And so there's no catching up going. What I feel like the non-industry insiders they're looking at is okay, something's slowing, but our market always slows at this time, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not judging springtime,
No,
right?
no.
We're not judging spring to spring. And so the scary thing is if we're going to plateau here, the rolling in of next spring, come March next year, woof,
It's going to be interesting.
it's going to be interesting,
Put your
right?
track shoes on.
Yeah, put your track shoes on again because it's going to roll in and because we can't cure the shortage of supply that fast.
No, there still won't be any inventory.
There won't be any inventory, right? You might take some demand out right now and you might just tread some water, but when the demand wave comes back, it's just not going to happen.
It is going to be a tsunami.
Yeah, and so when you look at you look at that inflation rate and you think that it's just a flat line curves. It's not. It's spikes and valleys.
Right.
It's spikes and valleys, right? And then here we kind of come next year, 2022, and we're going to hit another spike. Like we're just going through a little valley right now. You hit another spike, and then the year after that. But that's what you start getting used to in that new normal is like, this is the price we're at.
Yeah.
It's going to be a spike up, be a little bit of lull, a spike up, but it's not going to get cheaper.
Yeah.
And
Again, advice to anyone out there: take advantage of these low rates. That's the one
that's
factor.
the number one thing you got to do right now is investing. Do it now.
Yeah.
Right.
And the really the question is too is if you have property to sell, whether it's land or whether it's a home or even an RV or or an F-250, whatever.
Right. Whatever.
But the time is now. I mean, if you're going to sell, yes, you're going to have to. It's going to be somewhat of a push because you're going to have to replace it at the higher pricing. But you're going to get more money than you ever dreamed possible for the property that you do own today.
Right. Yep.
It's still happening. The housing boom is not over.
Yeah. So I think maybe next time we get together, we'll maybe dive into some of the investing side of it because it's the best time to if you're looking at investing in something. People don't understand. They feel like you're buying high right now, and they're like, "Oh, it's a horrible time to buy because it's such a." But when you don't see any valleys coming, and you have historically low interest rates like this, the only way for the interest rate to go is up.
Right.
Right.
And where we are, again, it's geographical, but go back and take a look relative to your market to the national. And, if you're in California or you're in somewhere on the East Coast, I mean, it may be different, but there are many markets. The market we're in, for instance, is we're still, even with the higher pricing, it's still bargain basement.
Right. Just because if you looked at, let's say if you added 50,000 to a house, of what that would take, payment wise for the interest rate to go up. So there was, because the interest rate was so low, it allowed that when we had that spike curve go up, it was a lot easier to absorb it than at 7% interest rates.
I just ran those numbers yesterday.
Actually,
I was looking around for my notes there, but basically the interest rate, if it goes up 2%, is going to hit you about double of what a $50,000 price increase would be.
Right. Yeah. And right now, that's what I say. It is a 50,000 price, and everyone gets sticker shock, but no one looks at that rate at the same. They know that going up is bad, right? But no one does the math. How bad it is. But forever, we thought 5.25% was historically low.
That was just crazy. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
We thought 5.25% was like, oh my gosh, we'll never see lower than 5.25%, right? But look what would happen if 5.25% was the norm now.
Mm-hmm. It would just, people would lose their minds.
They would lose their minds, right? And so because we had such low interest rates, it allowed basically the recovery to happen and these things to happen that need to happen. Like, God forbid that, there was no room and everyone dropped out of the market and they cratered the economy. I mean, housing is such a huge component of the economy. You've got to have a healthy housing market, right? So thankfully we have a healthy housing market coming into this recovery. And the automotive industry would be healthy if they could get chips.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but they can't.
But they can't, right? So there's a lot of markets that would be healthy if they could. So there's a lot of positive signs out there that, everything's going to be okay.
Right.
So I think the comfort of everything's going to be okay is good. It's just that new normal of the price. It's like, man, gas is getting more expensive. Everything's getting more expensive. Right. So just if wages don't follow it, then you got to make that adjustment in your life, right, to what the new normal is. And wages historically lag. So you're going to have that pain that is the price right now, right?
Yep.
And so, but don't add to the pain of the interest rate.
Waiting.
Yeah, by waiting.
So I think really, folks, the moral of this story is if you're thinking about investing, buying, building, don't wait.
Don't wait.
Pull the trigger.
Yep.
Do it now.
All right, Mac. Well, let's touch base next week.
Sounds good.
All right. We'll see everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Talk to you next week.